Number 10. Jean Grey. Probably the most iconic mutant to have ever merged with the Phoenix Force and acted as its host would be, of course, Jean Grey. And there are many who would also consider her to be still one of the most unstoppable hosts for the cosmic entity pretty much of all time. This isn't even just because of feats she has accomplished while merged with the Phoenix Force, but because even without it, she is known as a force to be reckoned with. Or maybe not reckoned with. I mean, I know I wouldn't want to deal with that reckoning. I'm not messing with Jean. I don't think you should either. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love it when I get to talk mutants, I love when I get to talk mutants, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. I know I'll be giving it a thumbs up because I get to talk about mutants. Woo! Number 9. Stepford Cuckoos. The Stepford Cuckoos are like Emma's children. Basically little Emma clones that were made with her own eggs, which were actually stolen from her when she was comatose. So genetically speaking, they are like Emma's offspring, but also were made almost exactly in her image, hence, you know, why we sometimes refer to them as clones. Kind of a little bit of both, really. Like Emma, they too have been considered by the Phoenix Force as potential preferred hosts. For a time, they were even chosen by the entity to act as its hosts, with 3 out of the initial 5 who were still alive at the time becoming phoenixes, and the other 2 being resurrected, kind of to an extent. Although the Stepford Cuckoos would not maintain their status as Phoenix Force hosts, and struggle with both programming within them and the Phoenix Force basically vying for control over them from within, they would at least get to keep fragments of the Phoenix Force within themselves afterwards, trapped in their secondary mutation, their diamond hearts, which if you didn't know, the Stepford Cuckoos have diamond hearts. However, eventually even these Phoenix fragments within them would escape, so sad. No longer Phoenix at all. Number 8. Magik. Although Magik wasn't a host for the Phoenix Force for as long as some of the others have been that are on this list, she is still one of the most capable mutants in my mind to have been a host. Magik is Illyana Rasputin, younger sister to Mikhail and Pyotr Rasputin. Her mutant power is known to be teleportation, but thanks to her ending up trapped in the limbo dimension for basically years, she is also pretty adept when it comes to experiences with demons and with magic. For a good long while, Magik was the ruler of limbo, and while in that realm possessed unlimited power, and even when outside of it, Magik was probably not someone that you would want to mess with. Even today, even with her not being the ruler of limbo, you don't want to mess with her. She not only is a mutant teleporter who is gifted in magic, but she is also an amazing fighter as well. The only reason that she even lost the Phoenix Force was because she was willing to take things further than her brother Colossus was at the time, who was also a host, for a piece of the Phoenix Force. This prompted a disagreement between brother and sister, with basically Spider-Man egging them on because it was to his advantage. Their fight escalated and resulted in them both losing their connection to the Phoenix Force, which was instead passed on to 2 of the other members of the once Phoenix 5, strengthening their connection to the Force. You know. Number 7. Namor, or Namor. Namor is simply one of the most powerful mutants around. Completely unstoppable in that almost every element of the character, in terms of power anyways, is considered to be close to, I would say, a 10 out of 10. Maybe even higher than that. Namor's pretty powerful. Namor is super strong, durable, can fly, can survive underwater, and is royalty, often having the full support of Atlantis, which he can pretty much call on at any time. He's smart, conniving, and ruthless, which makes him probably one of the most unstoppable mutants to have ever existed, even considering the fact that he is actually the first mutant to have ever existed at Marvel Comics. Fun fact. Namor didn't have the power of the Phoenix Force for long when he was part of the Phoenix 5, but what he lacks in length of time as a host, he definitely makes up for in raw, default power of a mutant, and also just as a character. Number 6. Emma Frost. Emma Frost is a mutant who we know as being super powerful just kind of by default, I would say. This isn't even so much because of what she is capable of with her powers, although that too is quite impressive, but because Emma is both a survivor and a thriver. She's just a powerful character. She is resourceful, smart, cunning, and hardworking. As a result, there isn't much that Emma can't do when she puts her mind to work. And I don't just mean psionically as a telepath either. Emma is an extremely successful teacher and businesswoman besides, which is all a testament to the strength of her sense of determination, and I think to an extent of her character. Emma ends up being one of the last mutants standing amidst the Phoenix 5 during Avengers vs. X-Men, and this isn't the only time that Emma would end up as a host for the Phoenix either. Emma had actually already ended up as the host for the entity prior to this event, albeit temporarily, although of course that time around she almost completely was corrupted by the sheer power of the Force, so there is that I guess to consider. Number 5. Kid Omega. Quentin Quire had hasn't really had much time as the Phoenix Force because we've only really ever seen him actually become the Phoenix in an alternate future reality. But although we only got to see him briefly, his appearance did at least seem impressive there. In the alternate future of 13729, one of the realities dubbed as the Future X-Men, Quentin eventually grows up, has a son, and yes, fulfills his self-prophesied destiny in becoming the host of the Phoenix Force. Number 4. Cyclops. Cyclops isn't usually one of the first mutants that comes to my mind when I think like unstoppable or most unstoppable. I mean, Cyclops is unstoppable, but you know, he's not usually in my top 10 in my mind. But when it comes to his time as the Phoenix Force host during Avengers vs. X-Men, well, that's a rare incident where he actually does really stand out as an unstoppable character. This is not because of Cyclops' base abilities and power levels, which, you know, not to knock those, but it's actually because when he was in fact a host of the Phoenix, he ended up being the last one standing as a member of the Phoenix Five, even outlasting Emma Frost. And when his old mentor, Professor X, came to try and plead with Cyclops, basically free him from the Phoenix's influence, helping a whole cast of superpowered characters to defeat him, even that failed to actually stop Scott, which is pretty crazy. In fact, all they succeeded in doing there was basically pissing Scott off, which resulted in the Phoenix-infused Cyclops killing Charles in response. Number 3. Rachel Summers. Rachel Summers has the potential to be even more impressive than her own mother when it comes to her capabilities with the Phoenix Force. She is the alternate reality daughter of Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl, and Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. And she's also kind of the daughter of the Phoenix, I think, because I think in the reality she hails from 811, Jean and the Phoenix are like merged too, so she's also kind of literally the Phoenix's daughter. She might not be quite as untamed as Jean is, but in fact it is Rachel's more tempered sense of control as the Phoenix host that makes her so powerful. Rachel has been depicted as a more stable Phoenix host in comparison to Jean, and despite her own fiery persona, is a lot less likely to go off the rail and do something crazy like, you know, destroy a planet. Even though technically that wasn't even really Jean exactly who did that, but the Phoenix who had adopted Jean's consciousness and was in essence basically impersonating her. But either way, we sure do like to hold it over Jean's head anyways, so yeah, poor Jean. There's some characters in comics that I feel like we hold so many things over their head, and Jean is definitely one of those characters where I'm like, I feel like she's done enough. I feel like also it wasn't really even Jean technically. We can forgive her. Oh well. Number 2. Wolverine. If you're wondering when exactly this happened in the main continuity, I'm sorry to say that it did not happen in the main continuity, but it did happen in the reality of Earth 14412, where Logan became known as Old Man Phoenix. In this reality, humanity was completely wiped out, and even though Logan himself also somehow died, he returned to life later on as a chosen host for the Phoenix Force, which, you know, does make sense. That is what the Phoenix does. It loves to resurrect people, you know what I mean? He would also be the person to lend his powers to the alternate future version of Allfather Thor in this reality to help him in his fight against Doom. At this point in Doom's history in this alternate future, he had not only survived humanity being wiped out, but he also had acquired various different superhero-based powers and artifacts, which basically gave him a massive power boost. Fortunately, Thor, with a Phoenix Force boosted Mjolnir, was able to take on and defeat Doom. Of course, you know, Wolverine kind of had to give up his life to make that happen, but of course, it's the Phoenix Force, so afterwards Logan was just brought back, because that's how the Phoenix Force do. Number 1. Hope Summers. Definitely one of the most powerful Phoenix Force holders out there among mutants would have to be Hope Summers. Hope is just hands down one of the most powerful mutants around, period, and is basically nigh unstoppable, just like across the board. Well, I mean, you might be able to stop her if you have like a bunch of clones of Moira McTaggart at your disposal, which you can then use to build and explore a multitude of possibilities via the creation and destruction of alternate timelines. I digress. Most people don't have that anyways. Other than that, I would say that Hope is pretty unstoppable. She's so powerful that many writers tend to just completely leave her off the table, or make it so there is some reason that she can't really like be actively involved in the story. She's just a little too powerful. Case in point, when she was at the center of Avengers vs. X-Men, but basically was relegated to the background for most of that event, with the excuse of kind of like it basically being like for her own good or her protection. And yet even in that story, she was instrumental in solving the problem of actually what to do with the Phoenix Force, with the help of Scarlet Witch using it to bring back the mutants and then defeating the cosmic entity by in essence banishing it from existence, for a while at least. I will also add that I think one of the most insane feats you can accomplish with the Phoenix Force becoming one of its hosts is to basically merge with it and then even in the face of all that power, reject it, which is is basically what Hope did, as her time as the Phoenix was like super short. But to me, that's just like more unstoppable. Some heroes must give it their all, while others are so powerful they actually need to hold back. You've probably heard of Omega level, but did you know that there is a tier even beyond that? Gambit doesn't often get as much love in the comics when it comes to what he is capable of, but he is actually capable of quite a lot. A lot of people don't think of him as being super powerful, and the reality is, it's because he's actually actively holding back pretty much all of the time. Gambit actually reached out to Mr. Sinister about helping him nerf his powers because then they would be more easy to control, which is something that he was worried about, so he has been holding back for a long time in the comics because of this. Gambit also learns of his alternate self, New Sun, and is basically warned of what would happen if he tapped into his full potential. Spoiler, it ain't good. New Sun hails from a world that was destroyed because of how powerful he was. Vulcan is pretty insanely powerful and in a dangerous way too, because he's so capable of evil due to being manipulated during his time in the Vault. In fact, in Empire we saw what was probably only a small fraction of what his darker side was capable of when he ran into the Kotati while out for a walk on the blue area of the moon, where the Summers house was located during the Krakoan era. He attempted to deal with the situation peacefully when he approached them, initially anyways, showing mercy, but when provoked, his darker side was unleashed, causing him to kill everyone save one member of the Kotati, who was basically left traumatized, uncontrollably uttering the word Krakoa on repeat. Holding back is a huge part of who this character is, or who this character has been for a long time. We're talking about Gentle. Now, I love Gentle and I think that he deserves more love in the comics, which is why I am super happy to be featuring him on this list, although at least he's gotten more to do recently, with him appearing alongside T'Challa in the Black Panther series, where he was revealed to actually have been working undercover for a long time with the King and for Wakanda. That's a whole thing. I'm not super well versed in it because I need to go and read that Black Panther series, but honestly, a lot of it seemed pretty cool. Gentle has vibranium tattoos which actively help him to control and at times restrain his super strength and super muscly powers. Also, they look really cool. It's unknown just how powerful Gentle could be, though it is believed the level of strength he is capable of could be in fact limitless, and that he could even hold his own against the likes of the Hulk. Gentle initially held back on using his powers because of trauma, which manifested in the form of a fear of his powers and physical pain whenever he used them. However, it was later revealed by Jean Grey that this weakness was actually a psychological barrier in his mind, as opposed to being legitimately tied to his mutant powers themselves. She helped him to emotionally heal and recover from this, removing this weakness from him. Still though, he probably holds back a lot because he is really strong. I mean, what can I say about Hope that you don't already know? Hope Summers is definitely one of the most powerful mutants around in the comics, and the X-Men were fortunate for a time to have her on the roster. Hope's powers allow her to take at peak mastery the powers of any mutants that are within her vicinity. She is only limited by a certain range in terms of her ability to adopt one's powers. She doesn't drain the powers of her target, and she's instantly able to master any ability, any power set that she takes on. Honestly, it's pretty wild. She's also literally mutant Jesus, being the baby everyone fought over in X-Men Second Coming. Hope isn't a Summers by birth, but she was adopted by the biological son of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor, and the adopted son of Jean Grey, Cable, aka Nathan Summers. Storm is a literal goddess in the comics. There are many times when, like her friend Rogue, if she simply chose to just not hold back, she could just do some serious damage to her enemies. However, Storm is a hero, and as such often prefers to maintain a sense of restraint and spare her enemies from a fatal demise when she can. Storm not only holds back when it comes to her powers, but also when it comes to her fighting prowess as well, as she is also an extremely skilled physical combatant. Rogue has since come much more into her own in the comics, with her gaining more control over her powers, meaning that she is no longer as burdened with having to worry about hurting those she cares for by accident. Rogue's powers allow her to absorb the powers and even memories of others through touch. She can take on multiple powers at once, but the setback is that her touch can also drain the life force of energy of whoever she makes contact with. Now, it turns out that the loss of control of her powers came from a very real place for most of us, her own fear of being close to people, of intimacy, and of acceptance. For Rogue, she just had to make the choice to just accept herself and not be afraid, and it was through that basically therapeutic work that she was then able to take control of her abilities fully. So if you've seen her making out with Gambit a ton in the comics, that's why, and that's how she's able to do that. And if you see Rogue coming your way, you do not have to be afraid, unless of course you are one of the baddies, and then you should be very afraid. Yep. Rachel Summers is definitely one of the most powerful mutants and X-Men members that we have. She is the alternate reality daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey, who of course are known to make powerful children together across the multiverse. Hence also why Sinister is so obsessed with the two of them getting together. Rachel is one of the chosen hosts of the Phoenix Force, and even without the Phoenix is extremely powerful, being an immensely powerful telepath, telekinetic, and chronokinetic. She can read time, skip through it, travel to alternate timelines and dimensions, and even manipulate time. Yeah, she's pretty powerful. She also happens to be immune to timeline alterations as well, and is unique in that she is the only version of herself throughout the entire multiverse. Even another Rachel Summers is not technically considered an alternate of Rachel as such. Even if she had the same name and kind of the same vibe, Rachel is 100% her own. She has no other versions of herself, which also makes her uniquely well suited to time travel. Less paradoxes, you know what I mean? Did you know that Spider-Man was an X-Man? Yeah, he was. Even though he's not really a mutant, but a mutate. Kinda makes you feel bad for Deadpool, doesn't it? Who always wants to join in on all this mutant fun and games, but is so often shafted by them because, well, he's Wade, and he's pretty annoying. Sorry, Wade. Spider-Man ended up joining the X-Men in the wake of Wolverine's death, as Storm had found papers regarding an idea to have him join the team and teach his own special class of mutants. As such, he joins the X-Men in Spider-Man and the X-Men issue number 1. There are multiple times in the comics where Peter has actively been shown to pull his punches for fear of doing some serious damage to his foes. If Spider-Man weren't holding back, he could likely kill some of the people he comes up against with one well-placed punch, and there are many stories that have kind of talked about that. Well, we never really get to know Miranda's codename, or even, honestly, her full name. We just know her as Miranda. She was given her very own mutant class. That is how great her powers are considered to be. Beast had to create a whole new classification of power levels just for her. She only appears in the Worst X-Men Ever limited series, which by the way is a really great read that I would recommend you check out if you haven't already. Miranda here is shown to have reality warping powers, but ones that don't adversely affect space, time, or the multiverse. Anything in her reality or the fabric of the continuum, which is pretty insane, because every other reality warper has some of that to some extent, pretty much. Beast decided to give her the new classification, which would sit above Omega with the name of Omicron, just because he thought that was one of the most ominous sounding letters of the Greek alphabet. I think my favorite thing is that although in this universe Miranda was beyond Omega level and could have fixed the world in a snap, she understood why the balance of everything had to be maintained, and so instead she chose to hold back instead of just simply using her powers to completely change the world for better, or, you know, perhaps accidentally for worse, as so many reality warpers sometimes do. Nate Gray has to be one of the most powerful mutants that I know, and is likely also one of the most powerful mutants to have ever existed. He is believed to be the perfect genetic offspring of Jean Grey and Scott Summers. Yeah, another Jean Grey Scott baby. Hailing from the Age of Apocalypse reality where he was genetically engineered by his world Sinister. You know Sinister, in any universe he's pretty much obsessed with creating the perfect mutant, which in this case is believed to be X-Man. Nate would be raised not by his genetic parents but by the AOA version of Forge, who is basically his adoptive father here. Nate has both fought on the side of his own reality's X-Men, but while he's also capable of traveling to other dimensions and realities in addition to manipulating time as well, Nate has also fought alongside the X-Men of Earth 616 too, even joining the team in 1999 in Astonishing X-Men issue number 1.
Saving the world takes everything a hero's got, but for some, less is actually more. Scheming like a criminal ever since her debut, Lady Mastermind. Lady Mastermind is known for creating hyper-realistic telepathic illusions. It's pretty scary. In Extreme X-Men 9, she created an illusion in Heather Cameron's head that Heather was stabbed, and Heather started bleeding through her pores. There was never any wound, but her shirt was soaked through. Lady Mastermind also convinced Heather's dad that he was drowning, causing him to suffocate in a room full of air. People will believe the illusions even if it comes with major changes in the environment. It doesn't matter, they feel that real. I mean, I can't really blame the people caught on the wrong side of her wrath. In the Marvel universe, getting randomly teleported is not that surprising probably. She can also make the illusions exactly your worst nightmare because she can read your mind a little bit. She can use her limited telepathic powers to camouflage herself and others, or make herself and others appear as someone else. In X-Men Volume 2, 193 she does this and makes an X-Men unknowingly eliminate their teammate. Even if you knock her out, the illusion illusions will sometimes still stick around, so that's a lot of examples of her doing bad things, maybe needed to hold back a little, but she is now affiliated with the X-Men, which has tamed her. Coming in hot with powerful telepathic abilities, a god complex, and a tendency to cause problems is Game Master. He has powerful telepathic abilities, so powerful he needs cybernetic implants to help him control his power. And that power, what does he do with it? Well, he helped run a competition for mutants to fight each other to win a prize. It's very Hunger Games core. How does a person even end up here? Games Master got to this point because he discovered that if he's able to really focus on a distraction, then his mental load would be easier to carry. Knitting is too hard, and the Hunger Games is apparently the perfect distraction. The weight he is trying to distract himself from is hearing the thoughts of every human on the planet. Almost 8 billion people's thoughts are running through his head 24/7. That sounds like a nightmare, and that's a lot, even for the most powerful telepath. No wonder he acts a bit unhinged. Games Master can manipulate many minds at once. He even claims he can control the whole world, but luckily he has held himself back from doing that. Boundaries. The guy is smart but lacking in skill. He manifested his abilities at an early age and got no help with them, so he needs a bit of training to really get himself under control. But even the way he is, he's pretty powerful as an unskilled mutant, so while the X-Men consider him a foe, they should maybe hold off on training. So while the X-Men do not consider him a foe anymore, they should maybe start training him to control himself. He does join the mutant nation of Krakoa in the end and hopefully start attending some classes. Angel used to be pretty basic in the mutant world. He could fly. He got his name from the angel wings on his back. The wings are really strong, so if he smacked them together, it would create powerful wind blasts. He could also just smack you with the wing. That would also hurt. Pretty soon though, Angel got an upgrade and a bad side, becoming Archangel. Archangel wants death and destruction, so Angel really had to get that in check so he could stay with the X-Men. Though it is bloodthirsty, the new Archangel side is what I consider an upgrade because it gave Angel new powers. One particularly useful one is healing blood. If someone gets hurt, all you need is a little bit of Archangel's blood and you'll be fine. Angel also got a hypersonic scream, a loud scream, basically so loud it can cause internal bleeding and break the sound barrier. You can wound Angel, but his healing blood is due to a healing factor, so if he gets wounded, he just heals. There was a moment in his Archangel journey where he became a horseman of the apocalypse, as one does. He was Death, the angel of death, so ominous. It was during that time he got his techno-organic wings. Though the wings are metal, they eventually molt and he gets his feathers back. They're also super strong and have stuff you'd want in a fight. Even if Angel lost his wings, he could still hold his own. He's good at hand-to-hand combat and sword fighting, and he's rich, which in today's economy, that's a superpower. He owns the company Worthington Industries, a Fortune 100 company. Zorn famously went from Magneto's disguise to an actual character because he was so cool. Zorn also pretty famously destroyed the X-Men and part of a major city once. This retcon has had fans up in arms since it happened for a number of reasons. When Zorn was Magneto, it made sense that he would target the X-Men like that. He's got a lifelong feud with them at that point. But then when that was retcon because the editors liked Zorn and Magneto needed to return, suddenly it was just this guy attacking the team. It lost some of its bite because there suddenly wasn't this lifelong feud fueling the fire. Zorn did have a bone to pick, but did he really need to do all that? The reason given in canon for his absolutely off-the-rails choices was that he was under the control of Sublime, and Sublime wanted Zorn to cause as much chaos as possible so mutants got a really bad rep. Then when it was time to convince the world mutants were bad, it would be a lot easier. Makes sense, but even in that context, Zorn, chill please. Innocent civilians, really big thumbs down all around, buddy. Mimic deserves so much more than he gets. Maybe he shouldn't hold back so much and he would get some proper mainstream recognition. Mimic can stay himself and yet gain the powers of whoever he wants, whoever is around him. And if he is around you long enough, he can have the powers forever. His body just adopts them. His mimic abilities are for anything, not just mutant mimicking. He's mimicked athletic skills on a football field before. If he stands next to Celine Dion, I'm sure we get a great cover of My Heart Will Go On. Most of the company Mimic keeps at this point though, they're mutants and other superheroes, so he's usually mimicking superpowers. He's hung around the original X-Men so much that he permanently has their powers, so that's Cyclops' Optic Blast, Beast Strength, Franklin, Jean Grey's telekinesis, Iceman's ice controlling, and, until he cut off the wings, Angel's winged flight. He had to cut off his wings because Angel lost his wings and needed a new set, but the situation does cement how powerful Mimic's mimicking is. He was able to create wings that were so close to the actual Angel's wings that he could just donate them to Angel. Mimic could easily become the smartest person on Earth very quickly, or the strongest, or the most powerful just by standing next to someone long enough. That is so cool and scarily powerful. Franklin doesn't hold back anymore. There is nothing to hold. The poor kid has drained his powers and then lost his mutant status, but he wasn't ever a mutant to start with. It's complicated. Franklin is the son of the Fantastics and was once thought to be an Omega level mutant until it was discovered his powers were so powerful it made him seem like a mutant, but he really wasn't. Still, when he wasn't drained of power, the kid could create whole universes, and his powers might even be on equal ground with Celestials should he use them fully. Galactus feared Franklin, literally evacuating the premises just to not fight him. Eventually, Franklin did get his hands on Galactus and gain control over him, using him to demolish two mad Celestials. This was done by Franklin combining his abilities from Franklin's past, present, and future, so adult Franklin was the one doing all this, which is good. A teenager should not be in that situation. Franklin is capable of time travel and telepathy and illusions and duplication and literally so much more. The Fantastics definitely had their hands full with him. This suggestion was taken from the comments of part 1, so thank you. Colossus can be a gentle giant when it comes to his little sister. Take Uncanny X-Men 153, the bedtime story comic for example. He loves her a lot, so mess with her and he loses it a bit. That's really not something you want from Colossus. You want the guy to keep a hold of himself. He was also destined to destroy Breakworld as foretold by an ancient mural there, so keeping his anger in check is in their best interest. But if he's capable of destroying one world, he could probably break others, so it's in everyone's interest to keep the steel giant on their side. Firestar is next, and this woman has carried our last mutant up in the air before, all 500 pounds of him, quite quickly. It actually hasn't even been established what Firestar's absolute fastest speed is, but it's gotta be speedy. Her powers are mainly microwave based, not like the food serving thing, but actual waves. She taps into the Earth's electromagnetic field and converts it into the microwaves. Those microwaves can be used in a bunch of different ways, like flight for example. She could use it to project energy at someone. If she focuses, she can even cause things to explode. She can mess up frequencies and electronics. Overall, she is very warm. She was once thrown through a brick wall, but literally went through it. The bricks melted so fast, it was like she never actually touched it. Overall, very cool powers, but very dangerous too. Since Firestar draws her powers from the electromagnetic field of the planet she's on, this case Earth, if she draws too much accidentally or purposefully, she could potentially destroy the planet. To stop this from happening, she does usually hold back, but when she's in space, that's not a concern. That means she gets more powerful. In reality though, she's just not holding herself back out of fear, so space-powered Firestar is the closest thing we have to full-power Firestar. Mystique has always been that girl, but just recently has it been revealed that she's more powerful than anyone could have guessed, and is even capable of being that guy. Mystique for a long time was a shapeshifter, but it's been recently established that she is actually a gene shaper. It's a subtle difference, but shapeshifters typically will just take on a person's appearance. Gene shapers become that person, and when they are shifting, they're shifting their DNA, it will rewrite itself. That's how Mystique was able to become Nightcrawler's father, not mother. The gene shaper revelation was revealed in X-Men Blue Origins 1. The issue also featured a note from Dr. Nemesis that basically said that Raven was way more powerful than she was letting on, and maybe even more powerful than she knew. And she's pretty darn powerful already, so all the destruction she has caused, it would have been way worse had she known the extent of her capabilities. In addition to the new gene shaper thing, she has accelerated healing. She can become immune or simply resistant to diseases, making a lot more sense now that we know she can alter genetic code. She's pretty good at stopping telepathic intrusion. She's a good shot, trained in martial arts, and has a solid Duolingo streak with at least 11 languages in her roster. I will admit, I took this last X-Men also from the commenter on part 1 of this video. Thank you to that person, and you are right. Cable is the king of holding back. He is an alpha level mutant in the eyes of Krakoa, but in the eyes of other Marvel characters, he's actually considered an omega level mutant. As long as you understand that he is super powerful, you're good. Cable's telepathic abilities are where he shines. He even declared himself the most powerful telepath in the world, before his powers burned out, that is. Cable is known for jumping across time and for the techno-organic virus that he got when he was just a baby. The virus caused a large part of his body to turn into cyborg parts. His regular human side is already very strong and powerful, so the cyborg part is that, but even greater. And like the commenter from part 1 shared, if Cable doesn't hold back, the virus in his body could make him capable of unleashing power on par with X-Man or other X-Men, or even his evil clone, because everyone in the Marvel Universe seems to get one of those at some point. We should feel lucky that Cable is held back by being a good guy. His clone Strife is known for going out and generally causing destruction. That could be Cable, but he's nice or nicer.
Coming in at number 10 is Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robbins, add some Canada, carry the two, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own unless you count his undeniable skill, so most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slowed aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Dark Claw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, this is still as dark as both Bruce and Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. Now after this, at some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a saber-toothed Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City, where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Dark Claw. Number 9. Sideburns. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little morsel of a planet teeming with scrumptious life. But while looking at her dinner, she happens to notice Wolverine, a mutant who can seemingly regenerate from anything. I mean, there's also Deadpool, but whatever. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburns, the regenerating planet. A planet-sized Wolverine that would grow back after each meal, giving the World Devourer billions and billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this, prone to drinking beer over anything else, and with predilection to being feral, would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating around through the galaxy. Number 8. House of M Wolverine. Now to be clear, technically this version of Wolverine is just regular old 616 Wolverine, since unlike other characters in this Scarlet Witch created reality, Wolverine retains all of his old memories, which gives him a distinct advantage in this world. But outside of his story-serving memories, before he regains those memories, this Wolverine was a member of Magneto's Red Guard, which saw him have additional training as a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative, adding extra skill to a character who is hard to even scratch on a villain's best day. Also, in this reality, Logan has himself a little relationship with Mystique, unlike his alternates, who seem to always be pining after Jean Grey. Is this an advantage over regular Wolverine? Depends on your taste. Number 7. Vampire Wolverine. In What If number 24, thanks to his healing factor, Wolverine is actually immune to being turned into a vampire from just a regular old bite, which allows him to be the best one suited to bring down the threat of vampires themselves. But when he finally takes down Dracula, he actually decides to have a little snack on the dead vampire, which does turn the mutant into not just a vampire, but the new Vampire King. The fact that Vampire Wolverine is a vampire means that his strength and speed are enhanced to vampiric levels. On top of that, he has an evil personality that is fueled by the character's desire to drain the blood of the living. Now couple that with his already somewhat feral personality, his healing factor, adamantium skeleton, and the vampire trait of immortality, and he is very dangerous compared to the usual Wolverine. Number 6. Ultimate Wolverine. I'm gonna be honest, this version of Wolverine is a bit alarming in terms of his morals and preferences, and just his behavior in general is just a bit less heroic than his 616 counterpart. counterpart. But despite that, it is hard not to admit that he is quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his prime version and is called a survival factor. That means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear explosion. He can also detect lies and still has an adamantium skeleton. He was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men. Although, it may have only been just because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey when he was like 30 years old, which is a little uncomfortable. Number 5, Days of Future Past. Wolverine in the Days of Future Past storyline comes from a future world that has become apocalyptic because of the Sentinels, which basically eradicated mutants by the thousands and ended up enslaving the planet, both mutant and humankind alike. Now Wolverine, who in this future is older and by extension more experienced, is a more powerful version of his 616 counterpart. He still has all the powers of the regular Wolverine, but he just works a lot smarter. Unfortunately, he still ends up passing when a Sentinel destroys him, leaving only his adamantium skeleton behind. But thanks to comics being comics, this version is revived and appears again much later on in Earth X, standing in for this Earth's Wolverine, who had finally married and settled down with Jean Grey, which I think makes him more powerful, but he also really settled, grew a rather large gut, and seems to have completely distanced himself from his former self. Jean also abandons her former life and is now an out-of-shape housewife chasing after their kids and resenting her choice to marry Logan. So yes, Days of Future Past Logan was needed here for sure. Number 4, Old Man Logan. In the alternate universe where we are introduced to Old Man Logan and Old Man Hawkeye, everything is in shambles. It's an apocalyptic wasteland, and all because the villains, under the leadership of the Red Skull, had coordinated a massive attack on the world's superheroes, leaving only a very few alive. Logan himself was tricked into wiping out every single member of the X-Men, and while that is tragic, I do have to say that's incredibly impressive. Like, damn. Impressive or not, it drove Logan mad with grief and he vowed to become a pacifist. He retired to a quiet farming family life, letting the world go to hell around him, but we need a story, so that can't fly. Eventually, being short on money and needing to help his family, he joins Hawkeye on an adventure across America to deliver a briefcase of super soldier serum. After he goes on this grand adventure, defeats the Red Skull, and returns home, the Hulk gang has decimated his family. This is when he finally pops his claws for the first time since the story began, and ooh, it's satisfying. He wipes out the entire gang and eviscerates the Hulk himself, and then eventually finds his way to the main Marvel universe. Another version of him even gets the powers of Venom as well. So cool. Number 3, Weapon Omega. After the Mutant Legion went back in time and accidentally took the life of his pops, Xavier, Apocalypse came out of hibernation 10 years too early and took over control of the United States. Enter the Age of Apocalypse storyline. The Logan of Age of Apocalypse is extremely ferocious and he goes by the name Weapon X. He has only one hand after having it blasted off by Cyclops, but his claws still pop through the nub, which is kind of alarming. He and Jean Grey set off apart from the X-Men to save mutants and stop Apocalypse, but Weapon X eventually becomes the new Apocalypse, gaining his celestial and mutant powers to try and stop aliens from destroying the population of Earth. Yes, it's nuts, but I suggest you check out this story because it's super cool. Number 2, General James Howlett. In the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Xaviers across many dimensions is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's Expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt but still Canadian. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles if you prefer and want to get smarmy in the comments. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Herc gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, which is a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately, due to the god on mortal nature of the relationship, the Greek gods banish the pair to Tartarus, where they fight hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for like 4 years. His penchant for big booms and affinity for political service make him a fun take on this character, and the beard? Oh, it's classic. And in at number 1 is Phoenix Logan. The Phoenix Force embodies life in the Marvel Universe. It is incredibly powerful, and when it chooses a host, that being becomes a force to be reckoned with, which is funny how it always seems to happen to characters who are already pretty damn unstoppable by themselves. Old Man Phoenix is an alternate reality version of Wolverine from Earth 14112, which features a story that is actually revolved around Old King Thor. Now, Wolverine's past resembles his Earth 616 counterpart, but it's a little different, because after Loki destroyed everyone on Earth, including Wolverine, the Phoenix Force chose Wolverine as its avatar, resurrected him, and granted him its powers. So what we have here is Wolverine's regenerative healing factor, retractable adamantium claws, and enhanced senses combined with the Phoenix's psionic powers, cosmic pyrokinesis, and flight. These factors come together to make him one of the most powerful entities in his universe, even more powerful than Old King Thor himself.
Number 10, Gwenpool. Gwenpool is truly one of the most unstoppable mutants. In fact, she is so unstoppable that she actually was able to make herself a mutant by willing that origin into existence for herself. I know, it's wild. Gwenpool, for those who are unfamiliar, is an alternate version of Gwen Stacy and Deadpool combined, who hails from an alternate reality not yet given an official number. The temporary reality number assigned to it currently by fans is 565. Gwenpool becomes a mutant after Kamala Khan, the current Miss Marvel, refuses to fight her when Gwen tries to instigate a battle, and instead tries to reason with Gwen. Kamala is the one who suggests that Gwenpool's understanding of the fourth wall and her belief that she is simply a character existing in a comic book could be a story that Gwen created as a result of not wanting to acknowledge the truth. The fact that she is actually a reality warping mutant. Possibly. The idea broke Gwen somewhat and caused her to retcon her own origins, instead becoming a reality warping mutant as Kamala had suggested and finding a home on Krakoa with all the other mutants of Earth 616. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and if you love it when we talk about mutants, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Rogue. Rogue is a mutant who truly is considered to be one of the most durable around. She can just take in a power set through absorbing someone's powers, permanently adopting it. In fact, some may not know, but that is actually how Rogue is able to fly and where she gets her strength and her durability from. She actually stole those powers from Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, aka formerly Miss Marvel, which is how she was known at the time. For a long time, Rogue was unable to properly control her powers, causing her to accidentally steal people's memories, powers, and even psyches just from touching them, and causing Rogue to often be much removed from her other fellow mutants, friends, and loved ones, afraid she might hurt them accidentally after she became a hero, and resulting in her basically wearing fully covering outfits, except for her face, of course. However, it was this very fear that apparently prevented Rogue from controlling her abilities, and once she faced it, she gained better control over her powers, making her virtually unstoppable, which is also probably why a lot of writers keep her on the sidelines, or prefer to. She's kinda hard to write because she is so unstoppable now. Number 8, Magneto. Pretty much nothing stops Magneto, not even losing his heart. Now, if you've seen our Unstoppable Superheroes list, then you know what I'm talking about. So for this point, I'm going to talk about another insane feat of Magneto's, other than when he defeated Uranos while completely heartless with some help from Storm. Not only can Magneto sustain his own flow of blood without a heart using his powers, but he could also seriously mess you up by manipulating your blood in your body. Or even worse, mess you up by just pulling out all of the iron from your blood. We've seen him do that too, and it was pretty horrifying, I gotta say. Magneto has also used his mastery of magnetism to perform the kind of blood witchcraft you'd associate more with a magic user, a warlock if we were talking D&D classes, I suppose. Magneto has used this ability to manipulate the blood of his victims to also control their minds, turning them into mindless zombies who will do his bidding as a result of manipulating the flow of blood to their brains. Who needs telepathy when you have magnetic mutant powers, I guess? Number 7, Apocalypse. I mean, there is a whole reality based around the idea of what if Apocalypse was unable to be stopped. This reality is known as Earth 295, aka the Age of Apocalypse. And in this world, Apocalypse becomes pretty much inevitable thanks to the early demise of one man, Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. AOA just goes to show you what a force Apocalypse is, and if you aren't convinced by an alternate reality where Apocalypse rules the world, you can also turn to a more recent X-Men event, Ten of Swords, aka the Otherworld Tournament. During this fight, Apocalypse faced his wife, who was possessed, and even against the seemingly unbeatable foe that was Annihilation, Apocalypse still managed to win, saving his wife and freeing her from the influence of the Golden Helm, while also basically saving all of Krakoa, mutant kind, and Otherworld, possibly the world itself, outside of Otherworld. Number 6. Jean Grey. You know how it goes. We have to talk about the most powerful original X-Men member if we're talking about unstoppable mutants. I just gotta do it. Jean Grey is a force to be reckoned with, and not just because she was the host for the Phoenix Force either. Even without the insane power of the Phoenix Force bonded to her, Jean has done some pretty impossible things, including almost single-handedly defeating Null during the Absolute Carnage event. And okay, yeah, so she didn't really single-handedly defeat Null one-on-one, but honestly, she probably could have if she really wanted to. She was, at the very least, integral to uncovering the God of Symbiote's weakness. Jean has been an unstoppable force many times over, and even while serving on the X-Men team recently, used her powers to single-handedly defeat Nightmare, who has managed to terrorize even Doctor Strange before, and she used her power to defeat Cordyceps Jones and his entire casino, simply by trapping him in an illusion while the X-Men basically did their thing. From within that illusion, Jean says it best when it comes to just how powerful she truly is in issue number 11 of the recent X-Men series. I was Marvel Girl, now I am Jean Grey. I did not even let the Phoenix command me, so what chance do you have? Ooh, fair. I would never try to command Jean Grey. I would only let Jean Grey command me. Number 5. Hope Summers. Hope is pretty understandably unstoppable. I mean, she, combined with the powers of Wanda, was even powerful enough to defeat the Phoenix Force, which is known for being extremely stubborn, resilient, and of course, pretty much invincible and indestructible. Now granted, the Phoenix Force did not remain defeated forever, it was not permanently destroyed, but that wasn't really as a result of Scarlet Witch and or Hope being ineffective. That was more to do with the cyclical nature of comics where, well, rarely anyone or anything remains dead, banished, or defeated. Hope is unstoppable because her mutant power allows her to adopt any other mutant powers, so really the only way to defeat her would be to put her in an isolation chamber, and good luck getting her there, considering that she currently lives on an island where she is constantly surrounded by all kinds of mutants from all different alignments, and where some of the most powerful mutants known to us reside. And then there's also the fact that, I mean, technically Hope kinda worked with Wanda's powers, and now Wanda isn't a mutant, so what does that even mean? Does that mean Hope can just take any powers? I'm still not sure about that. Number 4. Miranda. Miranda doesn't have a fancy code name. She's just Miranda. While not necessarily canon in the main continuity, Miranda is still one of the most unstoppable mutants I could think of, so I'm including her here, despite the fact that I believe she does exist outside 616. Although with her power set, that is something that seems like it could easily and quickly change if Miranda willed it to be so. Miranda is from the story X-Men Worst X-Man Ever, a limited series covering only one arc by Max Bemis and Michael Walsh. We are introduced to Miranda through Bailey Hoskins, who is the self-proclaimed worst X-Man ever. Bailey's powers allow him to self-detonate, in essence a human bomb, but that is all he can do, which means that it's kind of a one-use power, therefore lame and not really useful at all, because, you know, if you use it, you'll be dead. Bailey also isn't particularly skilled, athletic, or smart. On the contrary, his friend Miranda can warp reality, shaping it as she sees fit. If Bailey is the worst, Miranda is kinda the best. While Miranda does use her powers, Bailey doesn't even seem to notice at one point, calling her out years later for not doing enough, when, oddly enough, the whole time, Miranda has been unknowingly saving the whole world and possibly the universe multiple times over, which she reveals and is like, I was here the whole time like saving everyone, but you know, I just changed reality so no one really notices. Number 3. Squirrel Girl. I mean, isn't unstoppable just a synonym when you think about it for unbeatable? For some reason, when it comes to mutant lists, I always tend to forget that Squirrel Girl herself is a mutant. I don't know why I forget about Doreen, because I love her so much. And this also happens to me despite the fact that when we're first introduced to her in the comics, she advertises herself to Iron Man as a mutant. I guess it's because Squirrel Girl, despite being a mutant, is not often associated with the X-Men, but instead prefers to align herself more with the Avengers, or the Great Lakes Avengers anyways, and other Avenger-based teams. Number 2, Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister might strike you as an odd pick for one of our top spots on this list, but with what he has been up to lately, I gotta say, I think he deserves it. As we ramp up to the Sins of Sinister event, which I'm sure is going to be a banger, but also end up destroying the beautiful golden era that has been X-Men comics recently, and Krakoa. Poor Krakoa. Sinister is quickly becoming the most powerful he has ever been. Currently, this is all thanks to his Moira protocols, as revealed in Immortal X-Men. With the Moira protocols, Mr. Sinister can control the timeline, basically tweaking it as he sees fit to better understand the best way for him to shape the world as he would like it to be. If he makes a change that doesn't actually work out for him in the end, he just destroys that powered Moira clone that he has to erase that change and outcome, and then kinda like tries again. So this allows him, with all the Moira clones that are powered, to try, well, infinite possibilities for what the world could be, which is pretty scary. This is an insane level of power and could possibly make him one of the most unstoppable mutants ever, unless a whole bunch of mutants and heroes are able to do something about this, though he might not be the most unstoppable. Number 1, Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is truly unbeatable. Even the closest I have ever seen to her being beaten, she wasn't really beaten at all. She still won, but in winning, she also kinda lost. Does that make sense? Let me explain. The Fisher King on planet Arakko, formerly known as Mars, following the events of AXE and the invasion of the Eternal Uranos, who destroyed much of the planet and many of its mutant population, ended up challenging Iska to a battle of understanding. The Fisher King did this as a way of getting back at Iska the traitor, who had turned on her own people in the past, and then did so again when Uranos first attacked the planet, turning on her fellow Seats on the Great Ring of Arakko. This is not something Iska chose to do, but something she was forced to do as a result of her power, because she can never lose. And so to beat her in his own way, knowing that he wouldn't win, the Fisher King challenged her to a battle of understanding, where the winner is the one who most truly understands the meaning of loss. Ho ho ho! As you can imagine, Iska won, but in so doing, she felt great grief over all that she had lost and chose to leave Arakko and resign her seat on the Great Ring. This is the closest I've ever seen to Iska losing something, and still, she technically won because she understood grief the best between the two, or understood the idea of loss, I should say. Iska is such a fascinating character, so while she is gone, for now, from Arakko, I do hope we continue to see her appear in the X-books. I mean, who knows, maybe she'll be the key to defeating Sinister? I don't know. Number 10, Moira McTaggart. Moira McTaggart, when she was a mutant, was pretty unstoppable. I mean, she almost single-handedly destroyed all mutants from behind the scenes, which I think is pretty wild. And she also posed as someone working to save all mutant kind on various occasions, which I think also made her unstoppable in a different kind of way. Moira McTaggart, of course, is no longer a mutant in the comics, as she was depowered, but her mutation was reincarnation, with the knowledge of prior lives lived carry that forward into her next life. In fact, Moira's power was so great that it was proven to be connected to the very fabric of time and reality, with the whole universe seemingly resetting after each of her deaths. This also means that even after being depowered, Sinister was able to create and use clones of Moira with their mutant gene activated to predict the outcome of various events and shape reality in his own image. In essence, Sinister can now use Moira, or more specifically Moira clones, to attempt various tactics in order to get things as he would like them. Now, when a tactic fails, he simply destroys that Moira clone, thereby erasing that tactic, its outcome, and the resulting timeline/reality. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love it when I talk about mutants, I know I love it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards might not have his powers currently in the comics, but that doesn't stop him from being one of the most powerful mutants to have ever existed, and definitely the most unstoppable, at least across time. Besides, I'm pretty sure Franklin will have his powers and his mutant status back eventually. Like Gwenpool, Franklin was also revealed to have willed himself into becoming a mutant, although he did so subconsciously, which is even more nuts. Franklin's powers were of the reality warping variant, and apparently without knowing it, he used them to make himself appear as a mutant. However, as his powers waned, it was made clear that he was not truly one, but simply appearing as one thanks to these powers. powers. And apparently this was confirmed when we noticed that, yeah, Franklin, oh wait, no, you're not actually a mutant, you're just a depowered mutate, so whoops. This is why he ended up getting rejected from Krakoa, although Professor X did not appear to Franklin personally, but simply in his astral form. Number 8. Darwin. Darwin is one of the mutants who was brought on the mission to infiltrate the Children of the Vault's home base, known of course simply as the Vault. Darwin was handpicked for this mission due to his unique mutation, which allows him to adapt to any situation, evolving himself to best survive whatever he comes up against. For this reason, he's pretty unstoppable. This is also why the Children of the Vault valued him and ended up capturing him, because his mutation was also valued amongst them and makes them a lot more unstoppable as they can implement it into their own evolution to help them evolve smarter and faster, making them even more formidable foes for the X-Men. Number 7. Sunspot. Sunspot is a mutant that I feel I do not talk about enough on this channel, so I'm using this list to grow his ego just a little bit more. Sunspot is unstoppable in many ways. He's not only powerful as a mutant, even willing to give his life to save the day, refusing to be stopped by whatever problem comes his way, but he's also insanely ruthless when it comes to the world of business. He is wealthy and so often can break through barriers that some mutants might be limited by due to their income bracket. Besides that, Roberto is probably also one of the most stubborn characters, not even just mutants, that we have in comics, and for that reason he is also personally pretty unstoppable, as he doesn't usually give up or throw in the towel easily. And if you want to talk about power levels, woo! Sunspot has been referred to before as one of the most powerful mutants ever. Now granted, I think he was the one who called himself that, but Bobby's ego aside, I do actually myself believe him to be one of the most powerful. Number 6. Destiny. I love this suggestion from Jamie Dowdy, who commented on our last video saying, "I think Destiny will be the ultimate stop to Sinister. She's got something planned, as always." And I imagine a smirk at the end of this comment. As always, smirk. Because, well, you are so right, Jamie. Destiny does always have something up her sleeve. This is just because she is so good at seeing the future. There is very little Destiny seemingly can't see when it comes to all the multiple possibilities of the world. And I do agree that Destiny will likely play a key role in the demise later on of Sinister. Straight out of the gate, she threw many wrenches into his various attempts to enact his plan. If it weren't for Destiny, Sinister would have succeeded potentially a lot more easily and sooner. Also, people never think of mutants with precognitive abilities as being unstoppable because, well, they're usually pretty squishy, but you don't have to worry as much about being squishy when 1. Your wife is one of the most deadly mutants, Mystique, and 2. You can pretty much just like sidestep almost any and all dangers headed your way by seeing their potential before they have even arrived. Number 5. Emma Frost. Emma Frost is one of the best telepathic minds we have in the comics. She has proven herself to be even more powerful than some of the most iconic telepathic mutants, such as Professor Xavier himself, at one point laying traps in Cyclops' mind with which to ensnare Xavier should he attempt to enter Scott's mind, which of course he did. Emma also has proven how deadly she is when she manipulated the mutants into going to war during the Inhumans vs. X-Men event. Not her finest moment, to be sure, as a hero. Speaking of her being a villain, she also successfully stole Storm's body for a time in a body swap, managing to briefly infiltrate the X-Men, and even when Emma isn't using her own powers and mastering them, she's proving how powerful she is while using someone else's, like when she swapped bodies with Iceman and was able to use his powers to turn into water and travel through currents. So not only is Emma a powerful telepath, teacher, and businesswoman in her own right, but she can also be quite good at mastering mutant skills and power sets which don't even belong to her, which is probably what also makes her a really good teacher. Number 4. Mad Jim Jaspers. He is a weird mutant that actually started out as a villain who was anti-mutant himself. Mad Jim Jaspers was in essence someone who was seen as pro-human and anti-mutant until people realized he himself was a mutant with reality warping powers. He ended up being quite the foe as well, and despite having died multiple times, has returned time and time again. Most recently, he returned in Otherworld, first spotted there during the Otherworld tournament showcased in the Ten of Swords event. Jim literally just popped up there as the person in charge of the crooked market in Otherworld, a sort of black market in the fantasy world where a person can literally find and acquire anything they could possibly think of, no matter how rare, elusive, or seemingly forbidden. The even stranger thing is, last we saw him before this, I believe Jaspers was once again dead, and his random appearance was not explained here. So we still don't really know how he came back to life and got to Otherworld. I suppose we can chalk that up to just how unstoppable Mad Jim and his power set are. Number 3. Synch. Synch has recently become one of the most OP mutants to many X-Men fans. He was resurrected on Krakoa earlier as he was needed for a mission to infiltrate the Vault, where the children of the Vault had retreated to. The team was 3 mutants who are known for their unstoppable level of resilience, especially combined. It included Laura Kinney, formerly known as X-23, currently known as Wolverine, Darwin, and Synch. Of the 3, only Synch seemingly survived and escaped once they had the intel that they needed. Although later we learned that Laura also managed to survive, so now we kind of have 2 Lauras in the comics, old Laura and younger Laura, as she was initially believed dead and therefore resurrected. Synch was able to get valuable information back to Krakoa before dying himself and being resurrected once more in a younger body. You see, in the Vault, time moves differently, so he and the team had actually lived there for hundreds of years, despite the fact that a much shorter period of time had passed outside of the Vault on Earth. Upon being resurrected, Synch's powers seemed to mutate further, allowing him to retain the powers of a mutant that he'd synced with previously, as opposed to only being able to use their powers while nearby and synced with them. Although using this power to its fullest extent does seem to be hard on Synch's body, so there is that. Number 2, Iceman. I think Iceman has proven time and time again that he can't be stopped. The story I recanted earlier where Emma was able to use Bobby's power while in his body to travel through water as water, that is also something Bobby himself can now do, as was evident when he fought recently against Fin Fang Foom in the first run of the Marauder series. His fellow mutants and teammates had thought that Bobby had been destroyed when in reality he hadn't. It looked like Fin Fang Foom obliterated him, but Bobby, being Bobby, he just turned to water, went into the ocean, and came back up again, proving that he is a force to be reckoned with. Even hell can't stop Bobby. He'll just freeze it over again, as he's also done in the past before. And to be honest, it would probably be even easier for him this time around, as he's continued to grow in power since then. You know you're unstoppable when you're able to do things like freeze hell over. Number 1, Storm. Storm is not just a mutant with unbelievably unstoppable powers, she is also a literal goddess. What does that mean? Well, it means that Storm can be even more unstoppable just from the power of belief. At one point, Storm ends up literally being confirmed as a goddess after people believed for her to be one for years. We are shown that when people believe in Storm, this gives her even more power, which is wild because base level power Aurora Monroe is already off the charts. Storm is a fearless leader who does not even fear death himself, even going so far as to dance with a version of Death, Apocalypse's son, and one of his original 4 horsemen. And she beats Death in combat too, which is pretty wild. Of course, you know, this isn't Mistress Death, but it simply goes to show how fearless Storm is, whether we're talking literal death, metaphysical death, or an alternate representation of death.
At number 10 is Deadpool. Although we're finally gonna see Logan and Wade finally team up in Deadpool 3, let's not forget Deadpool's tumultuous cinematic history as Logan's adversary. Remember that early incarnation in X-Men Origins Wolverine? Yeah, the one where Ryan Reynolds played the Wade Wilson without the mouth, and therefore lacked the iconic banter and charm that we associate with Deadpool today. Blame it on the '07 writer's strike, which left many movies in disarray, but hey, at least we got the big showdown with Wolverine. I mean, that's what we all wanted, right? It's hard to deny that Wade Wilson's appearance in this film was a truly rough start. But thankfully, we've come a long way since then with a much beloved Deadpool franchise that has made fans forget about the dark days of that early portrayal. And I know Logan and Wade are going to team up and be all buddy-buddy in the new movie, but there isn't a chance that the two aren't gonna duke it out at some point in the new film. We're just gonna have to wait and see. Ogun is a formidable adversary in the Wolverine saga who possessed a unique and terrifying power, the ability to cheat being unalive. Initially, Ogun served as Wolverine's teacher and mentor, their bond akin to that of a father and son. However, their fates took a very dark turn one fateful night when Wolverine discovered Ogun's horrifying secret. You see, his ultimate goal was to gain the ability to abandon his own body and then possess others, granting him limitless power and everlasting youth. Wolverine, sensing the danger, fled before Ogun could execute his nefarious plan and possess Logan's body. Ogun's malevolence knew no bounds, even surviving a brief stint in HE double hockey sticks. He once temporarily took control of Kitty Pryde's body, only to meet his match by Wolverine's unwavering resolve. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it, and so would these claws. At number 8 is Roughhouse. In the gritty world of Mandrapore, Wolverine faced off against some seriously tough villains, and Roughhouse was no exception. This hulking powerhouse made his debut in Wolverine's 1988 series, causing chaos boss alongside General Koi in a bid for control over Madripoor's criminal underworld. Now, Rough House's origins are a bit mysterious. Some say he got his powers from being related to Asgardians, you know, like Thor, while others think he might be a mutant. It's a little bit unclear. Now, despite their fierce rivalry, Wolverine has still stepped in to save Rough House from the clutches of the sinister Geist, who I'm pretty sure we're gonna cover later on. For Logan, experimenting on people is a big no-no considering his past, and he wasn't about to let it slide, even for a villain. So in the world of Wolverine, even the most brutal villains can sometimes find themselves on the receiving end of a helping hand. At number 7 is Romulus, who burst onto the scene in Wolverine Volume 3, issue number 55. He spun a tale of prehistoric origins, claiming a kinship with the Lupine, a unique breed of feral humans tied to canine evolution. However, his narrative unraveled in Wolverine Volume 2, issue 312, when Ramus exposed his falsehood, revealing Romulus' deceitful tactics. Despite his tall tales, Romulus possessed a regenerative healing factor akin to Wolverine's, granting him remarkable resilience. In their epic clashes, Romulus brought a lethal arsenal to the fight. His black gloves, which adorned 4 blades instead of 3, proved formidable adversaries against Logan's adamantium claws. 3 of these blades mirrored Logan's own, while the 4th, a thumb-like appendage, added an unexpected twist to their confrontations. In this realm of thumb wars, Romulus emerged as the undisputed champion, making him a relentless adversary in Wolverine's rogue gallery. Number 6 is Razor Fist, a dude with literal blades instead of hands. Now, he may sound like a comic villain straight out of your wildest dreams, but hey, he's as real as they come in the Marvel Universe. Now, imagine this. You're Wolverine, the guy with the unbreakable claws and the super healing powers, obviously, and you've tangled with all sorts of baddies, but Razor Fist, he's a special kind of trouble. See, Razor Fist isn't packing any superpowers. He's just a regular dude with a serious case of Edward Scissorhands. The first time Wolverine faced him, he got thrown off a cliff. Ouch. But the next round, Wolverine showed him who's boss. Razor Fist even tried to tangle with Hawkeye, thinking that he could chop off the guy's arm for a prize. Not so good of a move, buddy. In a world of mutants and superheroes, it looks like sometimes all you need is a pair of razor-sharp blades to make a name for yourself. At number 5 is Geist. Nikolaus Geist is a twisted scientist from the WW2 era Germany, who is a real piece of work to say the least. He aimed to make super soldiers for the bad guys, just like Captain America for the good guys. His guinea pig was a bruiser named Rough House. But then Wolverine came in, the ultimate hero, swooping in to save Rough House and freeing him, and giving a Geist a taste of his own medicine by individually stripping away each of his own cyborg parts. Damn. Now the thing is, Geist was tougher than a cockroach. Despite looking unalive, he somehow crawled back from the brink. But life is cruel. Magneto, another mutant, eventually put the kibosh on him. So Geist's mad scientist reign didn't last long, thanks to the unstoppable force that is Wolverine. At number 4 is Magneto. One of Wolverine's most brutal defeats was dealt by none other than the X-Men nemesis himself. In 1993's Fatal Attractions crossover, Magneto returns with the Acolytes to take on the X-Men. Now things got intense when Wolverine goes head-to-head with Magneto. Now this battle was iconic because the writers finally realized that Magneto's whole shtick is magnetism over metallic objects, and Wolverine's skeleton just so happens to be coated in adamantium metal. Now, until now, Wolverine had been letting Logan off easy. That is until Wolverine gets too close and nearly guts Magneto, and so the villain retaliates by ripping the indestructible adamantium metal right off of Wolverine's skeleton. The metal is forcefully torn off of his bones and seeped out of the pores of his skin in an excruciatingly painful process. A jaw-dropping moment that left Wolverine on the brink of his demise. What's even crazier is that this was the very first issue where we found out that Wolverine's claws were actually bone all along. This iconic defeat had a huge impact, not just on Wolverine, but on the entire Marvel Universe. At number 3 is Silver Samurai. Silver Samurai, aka Keniuchio Harada, is a formidable Wolverine villain. He's not just any swordsman, he's a mutant with a unique power. You see, he can create a Tycon field and channel it through his sword, making it super crazy sharp. Think of it like basically a lightsaber, but even more lethal. In a 2020 Cable comic, Wolverine wanted to spar with him for fun, but Silver Samurai was all, "Are you trying to give everyone on the island a marker?" Translation, he was pretty sure he could wipe the floor with Wolverine, especially since Logan recently lost to a younger version of Cable. So imagine a guy who can turn his sword into a weapon of mass destruction facing off against Wolverine. Showdown you wouldn't want to miss. Wolverine's healing factor might be amazing, but Silver Samurai's Typhon Charged Sword makes him a brutal villain who's a real pain to stop. And number 2 is Sabretooth. Sabretooth, aka Victor Creed, might not be the biggest, baddest villain in the Marvel Universe, but when it comes to messing with Wolverine, he's a real pain in the adamantium. Sabretooth and Wolverine are like two sides of the same coin. They both have those cool claws and healing factors that make them so tough to take down. But what makes Sabretooth so brutal is that he's not just about his physical beatdown. You see, he's got a wicked sense of humor and a knack for getting under Wolverine's skin. Imagine this guy showing up at your birthday party every year just to ruin it. That's basically Sabretooth in a nutshell. But it gets worse. See, Sabretooth once hatched a twisted plan to hurt Wolverine by putting him up against his own son. It ended with Logan having to do the unthinkable, to eliminate his own son to save the day. Talk about heart-wrenching. Sabretooth might not be the strongest, but he sure knows how to mess with Wolverine's head. And coming in at number 1 are the Mongrel. The Mongrels are a multi-crew with names that sound like rejected comic book ideas. However, they are actually, in fact, real comic book characters. But they also carry a dark secret that adds a layer of tragedy to their villainy. So let's break them down. We've got Shadow Stalker, Fire Knives, Saw Fist, Gunhawk, and Cannonfoot. Now, what truly sets them apart, aside from their terrible names, is their lineage, or rather their twisted heritage. You see, each and every member of the Mongrels is actually one of Wolverine's offspring, a revelation that only came to light after their individual demises at the hands of the very father they sought to torment. That's right, Wolverine unknowingly exterminated his own bloodline. Now, it probably didn't help that their shared mission was to turn Wolverine's life into a never-ending nightmare. While their motivations remain shrouded in mystery, they pursued their vendetta by targeting Logan's loved ones, only to meet their untimely ends by his adamantium claws.
Number 10, Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler does not get enough love on our channel. I know at times I can be the one ragging on him, but at the end of the day, I really do love Kurt Wagner. I think he is a fascinating character and one of the most complex individuals that we actually have on the X-Men team. Even though his teleportation powers are not as impressive as some other mutant teleporters that we have, such as Magic or Manifold, Nightcrawler is still a character whose determination and faith tend to be his driving force, helping him to do the unimaginable at times. And there is no length to which he wouldn't go to help out his teammates, his friends, and his family, the X-Men. In fact, at one point, Nightcrawler even left heaven after his death and returned to life just to help them out. That's pretty wild. Can't stop that. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not let us know that you love us by clicking that subscribe button? Do it! And if you already did it, thank you. You're great. Number 9, Moira McTaggart. You wouldn't have likely thought of Moira McTaggart as an unstoppable mutant. Probably though because you wouldn't have even thought of her as being a mutant. But here we are, and here she is. She is a mutant. During the Krakoan era of the X-Men comics, it was revealed to us right near the beginning, during the Dawn of X period, that Moira this entire time was actually a mutant. What? And what's even more insane is she might have one of the most interesting and powerful abilities out there. Her power allows her to resurrect after her death, but not by coming back to life, but simply by living her life all over again, thereby resetting the continuity, manipulating the very fabric of reality and how we perceive it. Moira has lived multiple lives, always remembering the ones that came before. This gave her knowledge which allowed her to manipulate the course of history. Number 8, Wolverine. One of the most skilled and effective trackers we have over at Marvel Comics, and I would say probably one of my most favorite characters. If you try to run from him, there is likely nowhere safe for you to hide, at least not on planet Earth, and even possibly not in the cosmos either. Has Wolverine ever gone to track someone across the stars? Because that is a story I would love to read. Oh wait, there was something similar to that in the X-Men Infinity comic, where Wolverine was tracking lost mutants through space. Those are the little online ones that you can get on Marvel Unlimited that you scroll through, by the way, that are kind of like webtoons. Wolverine is not a man who often gives up, even when he wants to, and based on how tragic his life has been, there have been many moments where Wolverine has wanted to call it quits, but even then he keeps on going. Not even his own will to give up can stop him from soldiering on. Number 7. Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister isn't just one man, he can literally be an army of clones. What is more unstoppable than that? Well, not much. Especially when you consider just how brilliant and deadly he and each of his clones can be, with their immense knowledge of mutant DNA and twisted approach to evolution. Mr. Sinister isn't just one of my favorite mutants because of his fabulous look, although that definitely only makes me love him more, to be honest. It's because he's always up to something, always scheming and planning and hiding in the shadows. And when Sinister schemes, it can be dangerous, like to the point that he can take over the whole world by manipulating and tailoring the timeline to his liking. That kind of dangerous. See Sins of Sinister for more on what I'm talking about there. Number 6. Exodus. We don't talk about Exodus enough. As you know, I'm a big fan of psionic powers outside of, I would say, super speed and teleportation. I think this might actually be like my favorite power set, and definitely is one of the power sets I consider to be the most powerful. Why do I love it so? Why do I consider it to be so powerful? Because it allows you to defeat someone without ever having to really lift a finger. In the physical world anyways. Exodus might not be as well known as some of the others on this list, but trust me when I say he's one of the most powerful telepaths and telekinetics out there. We have seen him prove himself in psionic battles against ancient eternal creatures that were in essence kind of like dragons. In fact, I believe he even literally fought a dragon as well at one point. Exodus not only has his mutant powers, which were at an insane level already when they first manifested, but he also had them enhanced by Apocalypse, making him even more powerful. In fact, he is considered to be one of the most powerful mutants in existence. If that doesn't make him unstoppable, I do not know what would. Number 5. Cassandra Nova. I mean, Cassandra Nova is seriously just crazy. I love her, and I also kind of love to hate her. I mean, that's the beauty of Cassandra Nova. Technically, she is not quite a mutant. Instead, she is a Mumadrai, which is basically like an evil twin that you have to defeat to be born, at least according to the Shi'ar. In Cassandra's case, she is the evil twin of Charles Xavier, whose powers first manifested in the womb before he was born, so that he might stop Cassandra, who attacked him at that time. As a result, Cassandra was defeated and Charles lived on, being born into the world. However, even then, this wouldn't be the end for Cassandra. She actually survived as basically a collection of cells that look like goo, and she managed to once again manifest, returning even stronger than she was before. And yeah, like I said, she's a Mumadrai, but she's also like a Mumadrai of Charles, so that kind of makes her a mutant, and right now, or at least recently, last time I was reading Marauders, she was fighting for the mutants because she kind of allied herself. She kind of saw herself as one. So I mean, yeah, it kind of depends on the story, but I think we can consider her a mutant. Number 4. Jean Grey. Jean Grey was once the Phoenix Force, but even without the Phoenix Force, she is a powerhouse. In fact, at one point, Jean even stated the Phoenix Force was, get this, actually holding her back. What? Even without her connection to the Phoenix, even when she is not a host, Jean has proven herself as one of the most unstoppable mutants out there. She has gone toe to toe with gods and not only survived, but also won. Jean Grey is also one of the most unstoppable in the sense that she doesn't even really need to mess you up to win a fight with you. And I think that is a really impressive strength. Or rather, I guess I should say, she really only needs to mess you up mentally maybe, but then, even then, not in a way that leaves you like catatonic or anything like that. She isn't Xavier. She won't necessarily just like wipe your mind or anything like that. She doesn't need to. Instead, she'll give you an entirely new perspective that will make you change your own mind. Number 3. Magneto. While Magneto was stopped a while ago with him seemingly being killed during the long and epic fight that he had against Uranos, Magneto still wasn't even really stopped there. Now, allow me to explain. I know that's a contradiction. Minus everything that may or may not be going with him potentially returning from the dead in Scarlet Witch's comic, unless that's Joseph, his younger clone, and it could be. I'm not up to date on Scarlet Witch, so if there's some things that have come up in the last couple issues, don't spoil it for me in the comments. Magneto actually never died in his first battle with Uranos, despite literally having his heart removed. Magneto willed his blood to keep like pumping through his body, using the iron in his blood to help control and move it through him, with his mutant powers going into overdrive to act as a temporary replacement for his heart during the AXE or the Axe event when he was essentially trapped on planet Arakko, aka Mars, as he also fought to defend it. And even during his rematch with Uranos, he really only went out because he chose to go. Sounds pretty unstoppable to me, just saying. Number 2. Storm. Storm is one of the best, more badass characters that we have around. She is unstoppable on, honestly, a lot of different fronts. Not just because of her mutant powers to control the weather and manipulate the atmosphere around her, sometimes even the world over. Not just because of her insane fighting skills and physical prowess, and not even just because Storm is a goddess. And honestly, not even just because Storm is also an amazing leader, she's also that too. A lot of the time for me, it's Storm's spirit and her determination that just makes her the most unstoppable. She does not give up, even when it seems like defeat is basically inevitable. Storm makes her own path and does not let others define her, and that is both what I admire the most about her and what I think makes her often such a force to be reckoned with. Willful, strong, and undefeatable. Storm knows who she is and she isn't afraid to show it, and I love that about her. That's being unstoppable right there. Knowing who you are and being like, this is who I am, that's it. Take it or leave it. But you gotta take it because I'm unstoppable. Number 1. Apocalypse. Apocalypse is definitely one of the most unstoppable mutants around. He is one of, if not the most deadly mutant that we have, I would say. There's a whole alternate reality where Apocalypse has successfully conquered the world, and there have been a few times where he's also come close to doing that in the main continuity. That's why I personally was both so amazed and so surprised, kinda scared, when I saw Apocalypse join the mutant nation of Krakoa. Initially my thoughts were, uh-oh, when is he gonna betray them? Because that's gonna happen. But over time I came to understand that Apocalypse being so unstoppable didn't always have to be a bad thing, as he is also allied literally with all the mutants. He could actually be a force for good in that way, because if there's anything that Apocalypse does believe in, he believes in mutants, and so it kind of worked really perfectly that he'd work with them. Ultimately though, Apocalypse wants mutants to be at their best and to be on top. So as soon as there is a disparity between what he wants for mutant kind and what the people and other leaders of Krakoa want, he's probably gonna go back to being unstoppable in a more villainous way.